Hello and welcome to my channel. You might recall that I had an oil pan leak that made a huge mess. Well, I fixed that and I'm going to show you what I've done. Stick around. Before I talk about my oil pan leak repair, I'll catch you up on a few things that were discussed in the previous video, follow up to some questions. I did not share in previous videos the condition of my brake pads. And it was time for an annual inspection, a state inspection. So what better time to do that than at the state inspection? So I took the car to the dealer. I took it to the dealer for two reasons. One was because I knew they were going to look at the brake pads, and two, I knew that they were going to really look over the car to try to drum up some business. Everybody knows that that's what happens when you go to the dealer. They do the 20-something point safety inspection, courtesy inspection, and then they say, hey, we think you need to have this fixed. So I took it there and let them go to town on it. The inspection report said that the brakes were only half worn, which I thought was incredible, but they also posted the measurement. They measured 6/30 seconds. That's a little less than half, but still plenty of meat left. I don't know if that's another year and a half. We'll see. I expect to maybe replace the brake pads, not next summer, but maybe the following summer. That's 18 months from now. We'll see. I'll keep an eye on them. They'll get looked at again next November when it's time for the inspection. While I was in the maintenance mood, I also had the spark plugs replaced. Not by the dealer, which, by the way, the dealer did not find anything else wrong with the car. They looked the whole thing over and everything was in fantastic shape. I got the spark plugs replaced somewhere else. I guess I could have done it myself, but I don't like working outside in the cold. The leaves are coming down. I don't want leaves getting into anything. So I just let somebody else do it. And that guy I had inspect for a water pump leak. He looked and he didn't find anything. No signs of leaking, seeping, nothing. So his best explanation is that maybe if my coolant temperature gets up to be a little high, towing a heavy load on a really hot day with the air conditioner going, basically maximum stress put on the engine. And is that enough to cause some blow off, some seepage out of the expansion tank? I don't know, but maybe that's what caused it. But what I will do, and I still haven't done it yet, is I want to drive the car to warm it up really good, check the fluid level, let the car cool down to see if anything comes back up into it, and then top it off, document it, and then I will let you know when the coolant bottle needs to be filled again. That way I can give you something a little more objective than, yeah, it was about 4 ounces every 6 months. I'll be able to give you a very definitive answer on how much coolant my car uses, but it's going to take some time. Finally, onto the oil pan leak repair. Yeah, it made a huge mess. It doesn't take very much oil dribbling to make a gigantic mess under the car. In my last video, you saw the mess. And what I didn't show is I went through the whole area with brake clean and rags, and I cleaned everything out and I got it spotless. Then I drove the car for, I think it was about a week, because I wanted to see where the oil was coming from. And sure enough, as you can see, here it is. Everything is still nice and clean, but I have some oil drips hanging from some of the mounting screws on the oil pan. Again, these oil dribbles do not fall into my driveway. They just kind of hang out there. They're very, very slow drips. And then as I'm driving down the road, I don't know if it's vibration or if it's wind under the car, but those little drips eventually blow off and then they scatter all over the underside of the car. So let's get on with replacing or cleaning the gasket off of there. And obviously the first thing to do before removing the oil pan is we have to drain the oil. That's what this Fumoto valve is excellent for. Obviously I could open it up and drain it, but I also wanted to capture a sample. And the Fumoto valve is great for the samples. If I wanted to take a sample and then close it off and keep my oil because I'm not ready to drain, I could do that. But I was draining everything, so I went ahead and opened it up all the way and then let it drain. While the oil was draining, that's when it's time to start removing bolts for the belly pan under the car. I don't remember how many there are. This is not a how-to video, it's a what I did video, so I wasn't paying attention to that kind of stuff. The belly pan was surprisingly difficult to remove, and I've removed it before. I thought I had it all under control with pushing in this release tab and then pushing in this release tab, and you just have to finagle with it until it comes off. Removing, I think there's 20 bolts or screws holding on the oil pan, and I removed all but the two at the corners. Those I only loosened. Once those were loose, then I grabbed a screwdriver and got up under one corner of the oil pan and just gave a little pressure to break the seal of the RTV. With the seal broken, then I could remove the other two screws while holding the pan up, of course, and then lower the pan. With the pan lowered and out of the way, oil's going to dribble everywhere because this is just a lower oil pan. I didn't know there was an upper oil pan, so it's a two-piece oil pan. And so that seam, which is part of the reason why it leaked after a while, is completely submerged in oil all the time, except for when it's empty, of course. So I'm an Amazon Prime shopper, so I always have cardboard coming to the house, and when I get bigger boxes, I save that. So that's what I'm standing on. I'm standing on top of two gigantic sheets of cardboard. So when this oil starts leaking everywhere, or dribbling, I should say, it's captured somewhere. It's not all over the floor, and there's not as big of a mess to clean up. Once I got the pan removed, I took it to a parts bin washer to get the initial cleaning done on it. From there, by then, more of the oil had stopped dribbling, and then I was able to come over and start cleaning around the perimeter of the upper oil pan. I went around it with it's like a scouring pad of sorts. It doesn't scratch the metal, but it does really tear up the RTV very well. So I went around it probably 3 or 4 times. You're only going to see it once here. And it's time consuming and tedious, but it's important to me to get all of the RTV residue off. I want it all off. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. Plus, since I'm trying something that's non-standard, being the Tiguan oil pan gasket, I wanted all the mating surfaces to be completely clean. Once I got that clean to my satisfaction, then I took the oil pan over to a bench and started scraping at it with, it's like a faux razor blade. It's made out of plastic, so it's not a real razor blade, but it's a scraper. The parts bin washer did a pretty good job with loosening up the big chunks and everything, but then I still needed to get into all the little crevices to get every piece of RTV removed. I'm moving along pretty fast here, but this process here took me probably 30 minutes of being very careful and going around the perimeter a few times, spraying it with brake clean, and then scraping a little more until everything was off. It was perfectly clean when I was done. Take the oil pan, stick it back up in its mounting position, feed in the screws by hand, the 20 mounting screws. They do get torqued in a specific sequence. I probably didn't follow it perfectly, but I came pretty close. To torque my bolts down, I used a bicycle torque wrench. And I don't remember the range of my bicycle torque wrench, but torquing something down to 8 Newton meters is not a problem. The spec on these bolts is 8 Newton meters plus 1/4 of a turn. And I gotta admit, I think that 8 Newton meters plus 1/4 is just too tight. I just felt like I was, even by the time I got to 1/8 of a turn, I thought I was at the verge of stripping one of these screws. So what I did is I went to 1/8 of a turn, past 8 Newton meters, stopped, and then I adjusted my torque wrench to see what that setting was, and that was around 12 to 14 Newton meters. And so I just went through and I torqued down the rest of the bolts 8 Newton meters, then straight to 14 Newton meters, which again, just might have been a little too tight. Maybe 12 is better, I don't know. Once I got everything installed, I hit it all with brake clean to get everything cleaned up and ready for the road, because I want to be able to spot new leaks immediately. While the car was in the air, I figured it'd be a great time to replace the VAQ differential fluid. The car is 3 years old, so it was time. I've seen online some people say it needs to be done every 30,000 miles, but the VW Tech Man says to do it every 3 years regardless of miles. So I went ahead and drained it out. Follow the shopdap.com video. I really couldn't get in there and capture the angles very well, so so that you can see everything that I was doing. But follow their video. It's a good video. Something that's different though, I ordered their kit. I was expecting to get a funnel to pour in the fluid from up top to fill it up with, but instead I was surprised to get this big syringe, this gigantic suction thing. It was cool. It allowed me to suck almost all of the fluid out of the bottle and then go straight up to the fill hole and just insert the fluid like nothing. It just went in. It took about 2/3 of a bottle. So I've got plenty left over, and I only spilled a few drops because you have to fill until it overflows. 8mm Allen heads to remove and install these plugs. The plugs have to be replaced. They're one-time use only. And then from this location on the fill plug, I had to use a couple of extensions and actually I think maybe only one extension, but 2 U-joint fittings so that I can bend back and get out from underneath the exhaust. The drain plug is a little tougher to get to, especially to get out. You'll see that in the Shopped App video, but not a big deal. In my next video, I will share with you the installation of my ECS skid plate. Yes, I did get an ECS skid plate, even though I have a steel oil pan. I bought the ECS skid plate when I thought that I was going to switch back to a plastic oil pan, and then while the skid plate was on its way to me, I changed my mind and decided to try to reuse that oil pan and the TIG-1 gasket. I have had, at this point, the gasket installed for 1 week, around 500 miles. The pan is still dry as a bone, so right now it is holding up. How long will it hold? I don't know, but I will let you know. So join me next time for that skid plate installation. Subscribe if you're interested in following that and other things I do, if you like what I'm doing. Again, I appreciate you being here, and I will see you next time. Have a good one.